kind of reached this point of like, it's not growing anymore. We don't know what we're doing wrong. We love Jesus, but there are systems and structures and leadership that wasn't happening. I think it starts with you. I think it starts with me as the leader. I have to stay motivated. I have to stay passionate. If I'm not showing up like with the excitement of what we're going to do and accomplish and the joy of doing it with you, then that's on me. Like that's the first thing. You have to be inspired and motivated, and you have to show up to wherever you're going, because they're not going to show up especially volunteers. They're not, number one, they're not going to join your team if you're not. And number two, you're asking them to do something that you're not even willing to do yourself. I've had somebody tell me one time, it stuck in my mind. They said, when you go to a job, you get a paycheck. In the church world, the paycheck is
Well, hey, welcome to the Sunday Social Podcast. I am your host, Derek Ortiz, and today's a special one because I get to interview someone who was actually my boss previously. We were both on church staff together, and he was my creative pastor. And I tell people all the time, he was one of the greatest leaders I have ever been able to be under. And I've learned so much from him, and I know you're going to be able to do the same. So be sure to lean in, take notes. He is now the vice president of a company called Church Circle, which their goal is to just create community online within church creatives, church staff, and to be able to just continue to reach people through a community. So without further ado, enjoy this episode with Brian Caddell. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and follow us so you can stay up to date with what's happening. But check out this episode with Brian.
Well, man, I wanted to get you on the podcast because, one, we've had the privilege of serving on the same team together, being on staff together for 3 years? Something like that? Yeah. And
the best 3 years of your life.
It was. I always tell people that you were one of the best leaders I've had, just because you had a way of making people feel seen, feel known, and then just allowing our voices to be heard. I think you had a way of doing that, and I know in your head you're probably like, I don't know how I did that, but but I think you did a great job of allowing us to dream, to express how we felt things should go, or any creative ideas we had, and you were able to just speak to those. But then beyond that, you got to know who we were. You got to know the intricacies of our life and our families and things like that. And so I wanted to get you on today, just kind of talk over that. I know that, like I said in the intro, you've had 20 years of experience. That's crazy. 20 years. And so I guess just start off with those who don't know who you are. What is your background? How did you get into this? How did you get to this point?
Okay. Yeah. I'm a pastor's son. Right now I have a family of 5 children.
Let's go. I'm busy. You got a whole worship band.
Building that worship team. And I married my high school sweetheart, Jacqueline Caddell. She's lovely.
Shout out Jacqueline.
I wouldn't be here where I am today without Jacqueline. She's amazing. But yeah, I'm a pastor's son. I am one of, I have 3 siblings, 3 brothers. And so I'm a middle child. And so I have that kind of dynamic of peacemaker in the family. My older brothers won a lot of things. My younger brother was picked on. Not really, but kind of. But yeah, I grew up in church. God got a hold of my life at the age of 16. I had a gift to play guitar, and somebody told me I could sing. I don't think I'm the best singer. You're not going to buy my album, but I think that if you came to the church and you were worshiping alongside of me, I think you're going to feel the presence of God.
The EQ was just right.
Oh, they tweak it all. Here, They had the auto tune. They had that. But yeah, no, it's man, God's good, and I've had a lot of experience of building teams, leading teams. Leading with wonderful people like you, honestly. But I fell in love with the mission of the church, which is to reach people for Jesus. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I had friends that the style of church that I come from, they didn't understand the Jesus that I understood, that I got to know. They kind of grew up in more maybe a traditional mindset. My background is more Pentecostal background, but I didn't necessarily feel like I could invite my friends to church because I just maybe didn't understand our style. And so that kind of what drove me to, build creative teams that could create environments where the gospel was shared in a more, relatable way to them.
Right. So how long were you leading worship?
So I started leading at my high school in 2000, in the year 2000.
2000. Okay.
Yeah, I started leading it like the year 2000. Y2K happened, and I just jumped into worship ministry. But then for my dad, 2002, 2003, I wasn't the first worship leader for my dad. My dad's a pastor, and he didn't hire me first, so there's something there. My best friend got the job. His name is Justin Evans. You know who you are.
Maybe he did it on purpose. He's like, I can't hire my son.
No, yeah, he definitely did. Well, it's strategic. As a pastor, you're like, I can get 2 for 1, so it's like, my son ain't going anywhere. I'm going to hire his friend who's really good at
there you go.
leading worship too. So, no, but, we had a great time. We learned a lot. But when my friend ended up, moving to Dallas, I became the worship pastor, and that was like in 2005, somewhere in that range.
And then so timeline wise, what led you to be like the creative pastor? Was it just like a natural progression for you, or was it somebody that kind of spoke that over you?
Yeah, well, early on, so I don't come from a large church. Okay. The church that at that time was about 100, 125, 150, that range. And my dad, we were needing some leadership coaching. We, my dad planted the church in 98. And we kind of reached this point of like, it's not growing anymore. We don't know what we're doing wrong. We love Jesus, but there were systems and structures and leadership that wasn't happening. And it's just because we didn't know. And so he brought some mentors in, and I was sitting across the table from a pastor that has a church of like 3,500 to 4,000 people. And from that experience, and I can't summarize everything, but I can just say the one thing that he was sitting across the table from me with a couple of the staff, and he was just like, look, with the permission of your pastor, I'm just going to speak to you guys like I would speak to my own staff. And I'm like, this is great. And so he sat us all down, and when he got to me, he said, Brian, what are you doing this week? And I was like, I'm planning the set list, and I'm sending out emails to make sure everybody, we didn't have planning center, I'm sending out emails to make sure everybody shows up to the night, they know what they're doing, all the chord charts, all that stuff was being sent out. And after he got done with everybody, he came back to me and said, hey, okay, Brian, I love that you're doing that. I expect that because you're the worship pastor. That's what you're supposed to do. But in order to grow this church, we're going to have to do a whole lot more than you just showing up to lead worship. I don't have the budget to hire a social media person. I don't have the budget to hire a video guy. What I have the budget is to hire you, and I need you to build teams. And so if you don't have a team built around you in 90 days, I couldn't hire you in my church. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. Wow. Oh, I can do more than just leading worship. Yeah. And so we started building creative teams at that point. And our creative team, I'm not saying in the next month, but in the next 6 months, it doubled to at least 30 people. We were at 15. And then within a year, we had like 80 or 90 people on the team. So it was just a journey of working on my leadership, putting in systems and structures into the teams, and then doing projects, doing things that, attracted more people to join the team. So it was crazy.
So that was like an eye-opening moment for you.
100%, man. I didn't realize what was possible. I didn't realize that I didn't have to just put myself in the worship bubble. There's so much more the church could do if there was leadership, there was structure and organization in order to make that happen. So
yeah. So you start to realize man, if I just learn to care for people, lead them well, that the church can expand, and I don't have to send out emails. Somebody would willingly do that while I go and figure what else we can do to add to the team or be able to do that.
Yep.
So I think that's beautiful, because a lot of people, sometimes they'll get so caught up in what they're doing that they, perspective shift, right? It's like, man, if I were able to free up this little task that I'm doing to be able to focus on something else and delegate it to someone else, that it furthers the mission, and at the end of the day, you still are able to reach people, and who doesn't want that,
Yeah, you have to really look at what's on your plate. Okay, you're hired to be this worship pastor, but your pastor's asking you to do more in order to grow the church, right? And so what was on my plate was band, vocals, audio, video, right? And not audio, video in the auditorium, so production.
Yeah.
And then we didn't have social media at the time, but we did eventually, by the time I was done there, had social media, but had social media and then video, announcements and all video stuff, like life change videos and stuff like that. And so I had to identify the different areas that I was responsible for, and then develop the systems and structures in order for those areas to flourish and expand. And they had to have leaders. So if I was in a position where I'm looking at what I'm responsible for, I'm going to identify those core things that are going to make the vision happen in my department. And then I'm going to delegate and start assigning and, first I'm going to build a team. I'm going to get people in the room, executive people that are ready to hustle, they're humble, and they're hungry. Like those are the 3 things I look for. And I'm going to get them in a room early, and we're going to start dreaming about what this team could look like. We're going to start watching what other churches are doing. We're going to start brainstorming ideas, and they're all going to have tasks, and I'm going to be leading this out, and we're going to go accomplish it. And that's kind of how it started, really. So
yeah. And I was going to kind of go there, but you touched on it. So you said hungry, hustle, humble, right? Those are kind of the characteristics of what you're looking for. So in the early stages of you trying to recruit a team, right? What are some of the things that you felt, okay, I need to find this person, or this is the type of character I need, or like what kind of sparked that for you to find those type of people?
Yeah, I mean, you need to find people that have those characteristics, the ones we just mentioned. So they're hungry, they're wanting to learn, they're excited about life. Like they don't have to be like, total extrovert, but like excited about like building something. Like everybody wants to go to Disney. We've heard this. Everyone wants to go to Disney, but not everybody wants to build Disney World, right? There are people in your life and my life that want to build something, and I can identify that by how often are they showing up? Are they coming and adding value? Like I've had people come to the church, specifically the woman that's leading our vocal team right now. She showed up to church and she started providing value to me. Like, hey, I noticed that your voice is not. I got you some hot tea, and I'm like. Wow. I didn't even ask for it. Like, she's like, I just noticed it. I'm like, that's a person you want to work with, right? Somebody that's seeing things before you're even asking for things. And, but yeah, hungry, they're humble. You don't need people on your team that, aren't able to take, any kind of criticism. They constantly have friction, and unwilling to resolve issues. So humble, and then obviously people that have the ability to hustle. And so not everybody has the ability to hustle. Like somebody in their 40s, maybe they have 5 kids. Maybe they can barely pay their mortgage and their taxes are overdue. I'm just kidding.
Is that your life?
My taxes. I'm good. We can afford the mortgage and I can pay my taxes. But it is true to a point. Some people don't have the margin to hustle, and it's okay. Some people do. And so early on, I was looking for those 3 things. And once you identify that in those people that are on your team, and maybe there's a department or maybe there's an area that you haven't found somebody, we'll build in these other areas and that person will show up eventually. And you might have to do those things until that person shows up, or you find somebody that can manage it for a period of time. But that's what you look for. And then you start putting in the systems. And so we used to like get together at 7 a.m. before they went into their real job. They would meet at the church and we would do like a 7:30 sometimes. We'd do a meeting for an hour. We'd go through their areas. We'd do a lightning round. What are you doing this week? What are the things that went well? What are the things that we need to work on? And then we would kind of hash out for 30 minutes, like what the future looked like in the next couple weeks, couple months, and then we'd go our ways. But that gave them a piece of the pie, and all of a sudden the momentum starts. Now I got people running with me. I'm not just a single man doing this all by myself. Now I'm leading a team of people. It is so much easier now in this context, having video online, whether you use Zoom or we use Bubble, or Butter, not Bubble. We use Butter, but it's so much easier to lead these days because you can lead from somebody still at home before they're going into work. You can, hey, let's jump on a call. Yeah. But the important part is building that first group, that executive group that helps you lead this thing out. And I say this all the time. Look, if you want to go far, build a team. If you want to go fast, you're going to have to go alone. So build that team, and it might take some work up front, but find some people you want to spend some time with and pour into them. And I'm telling you, it will pay off in the long run.
Yeah. No, I love that because even Jesus, right? Jesus knew he couldn't do this by himself. Like he understood, yes, I am the Son of God, but it's going to take people to get this message out, to understand and to know and to, instill these values into people and to go into all the earth and make disciples. He couldn't do that by himself. Like he started it, but even to this day, that Great Commission is still living, and I love that because sometimes we as creatives can get so caught up, like you said, in doing the thing that we forget. If we just can kind of look beyond the moment, know that this thing that we're doing can be self-sustaining if we have the right systems. And I think that's what that person that you mentioned came into your church and helped you do, right? Is like think beyond yourself and put systems in place.
Yeah. It was what I needed to hear. I didn't know that I could do more. Nobody's told me, hey, you can do more than just that. And then also I would say early on, there was some conferences we went to and I started to see church differently. Like, oh, you can do this. We went to C3 conference in Grapevine, Ed Young's church. And that inspired us too. And so there's elements that I could look back at my life and go, what were the main things? It was definitely mentorship. It was definitely conferences and books. Like those were the three things that I think if a leader can get like the hunger for that, like finding what's going to keep you motivated to push, to build, then do those things. Like, and for me, it was conferences, books, and my mentor. So
those three: books, conferences, mentors. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So once you had the team, what were some ways that you would, because like you said, they're volunteers, they're giving up their time, they're waking up an hour earlier before they have to go to work. That's not easy. That takes sacrifice. That takes dedication. And it's up to the leader to be able to instill that, to cultivate that. What are some ways that you were able to get the team excited, motivated, not feel like you had to pull teeth to get them to show up?
Yeah, I think it starts with you. I think it starts with me as the leader. I have to stay motivated. I have to stay passionate. If I'm not showing up like with the excitement of what we're going to do and accomplish and the joy of doing it with you, then that's on me. Like that's the first thing. You have to be inspired and motivated, and you have to show up to wherever you're going, because they're not going to show up especially volunteers. They're not, number one, they're not going to join your team if you're not. And number two, then you're asking them to do something that you're not even willing to do yourself. Like you're going to ask them to show up passionate, excited, and give up the time that they're giving up when you're showing up, just going through the motions. Like that's not going to happen. So It starts with you. You need to figure out where you find your passion. How do you stay motivated consistently? And obviously, it's devotion. It's spending time in the Word. Okay, God, I know you've called me to this, and that sets up everything else. And then it's the books you read, and it's the conferences you attend, and it's the information, the communities that you're part of. I lead out Church Circle, as you guys know. I lead out Church Circle, and it's a place for community. And so it's all those things. Like I stay motivated through the communities I'm part of, the books I read, and whenever I'm consistently doing that, then people show up. Like they can see that we're doing something, and the projects that we accomplish once we're doing that, the wins we get under our belt. And oh my gosh, we did this cool thing. I don't have to convince anybody to be a part of it. They want to be a part of it. Right. And so what I tell leaders is like, go recruit people. But if you're struggling with momentum, well, then there's issues there's issues under the surface that you got to figure out as the leader. Is it a cultural problem? You might have a department that the culture's just not great right now. Maybe there's not a hustle kind of culture. Maybe there's not a make it happen kind of culture. And so you got to correct those issues, and you correct those things by telling stories. Here's how we operate. Here's who did this. I remember I used to do this, because we all struggle with people showing up on time, right? And so sometimes not in a, what's that, passive aggressive way, but just, we used to celebrate, hey, thank everyone in the room that showed up. Hey, if you showed up early, today we have a $5 Starbucks card for you. And it's like, 15 people got $5 Starbucks cards. Maybe that's not in the budget for you, but it's just a way to encourage like the values of like, this is how we operate. And over time, as you celebrate, tell stories, those values change, and they change because you're elevating those things, and they change because you are them. Like I don't show up late. I'm 5 minutes early at least. Right. Or if we say that we make it happen and then the project's due and I just tell the team, hey, we're not going to make it happen, let's just go home. That's an issue, right? So you change the culture by setting the values and then being those values.
That's good.
So
yeah, stories are huge. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing for me that was eye-opening, because of the church I came from. We rarely, it was a smaller church, but we rarely heard of like the impact that was happening. Whereas I remember like here when we were on staff together, like stories were huge, because that was like the lifeblood of our church. That was what kept us going. That was like the recharge on our battery, because we got to see the actual fruit of our labor, like the sacrifices that our teams made, we got to remind them like, man, this is why we get to do it. Like, this is why we do it. This person that was struggling or gave Jesus their last chance, like they showed up, and because of our creativity, I'm not saying it's all due to that, but it's part of it.
Yeah.
And we get to play our part by building that and helping that. So yeah, I think we're huge on telling stories because we understood the impact was like, sometimes as creatives, we don't get to see visibly. We're not there, giving people high fives at the front of the door, seeing them smile when we show up. We're behind a booth, or we're behind a phone taking photos, or whatever that is. We can never get to see the impact sometimes. So I think it's on the leader to be able to remind their team like, hey, no, there is impact. There's people showing up because of our hard work, and so
I think some of the best leaders do that. Like I think you would agree with me, but the best leaders have the ability to not get so bogged down by the task, but they're able to like connect with people and hear the stories. And part of my responsibility as a creative pastor was to go to pastor and say, hey, what are the stories that you're hearing? Here's what I'm hearing. And we're sharing these crazy life change stories that people like you said, an atheist, an agnostic walked into our church one time, and he gave his life to Jesus and started attending our class before service. And that dude is forever changed. Like, he went from saying there's no proof that God exists and to, I believe in Jesus. And for us, that was just like, if that doesn't motivate you as a creative, especially in the church world, I think you're in the wrong field. Like, right. Go somewhere else. That's the bread and butter, like those kind of stories. So
yeah, I know. And I think what's cool is that everybody plays a part in it, and so we can all celebrate it together. And then one thing you did say too, which I love, is like, you're quick to celebrate people, because nobody wants a leader that's just critiquing everything, but you never get to hear them celebrate you. But imagine if if every one critique was outweighed by 10 moments of celebration. Like, of course I'm going to hear what the feedback is from that leader, because I know that they love me, they care for me. But if your critiques outweigh your celebrating, I'm like, to me, there's something wrong. You have to figure that out, because everybody wants to be somebody that's celebrated,
Yeah. I've had somebody tell me one time, it stuck in my mind. They said, when you go to a job, you get a paycheck. In the church world, the paycheck is the appreciation. It's telling people, hey, I saw what you did, and the result of what you did was this. And that life changed. That person that gave their life to Jesus, said yes to Jesus, you had a part to play in that. And that's me giving you, as the leader, your paycheck, even though I know you don't need it. But it's wise for me to say, hey, the impact, your sacrifice, this person came to our church, was done with God. But because you said yes, you're serving, you're giving up your time, energy, and efforts into making this happen, that story is partially due because of you. And we all play a part, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, for sure. So kind of on that vein, where if we're kind of going as in a timeline, right? You've recruited people, they're on your team, you're motivating them, they're excited. If I'm someone that's in that position, and say we have Christmas coming up or Easter, how as a leader can I go in and cultivate a culture of collaboration? Because as creatives, we all have the best ideas. We all think we know it all, or are very sensitive. We're very vulnerable with our ideas. And so in what ways were you able to see in that role of being a creative pastor, collaboration being successful?
Okay, so it starts with the culture, right? So your culture has to be correct in order to collaborate. And so if that's good, then you build the systems, and the systems in place are, brainstorming sessions. We had a whole process on how we developed series, and out of those series, we have elements that we're going to do inside those series. And so we would do brainstorming sessions. And the importance of brainstorming sessions, you want dreamers in the room. And so, we would have all the dreamers show up, and you can identify that by their inability to, sometimes, I'm not going to say all dreamers, but sometimes the dreamers can't execute. Because they just dream all day long. But you get the dreamers in the room, and we just start collaborating, and you set the rules up front for the brainstorming session. And I think you've mentioned this, or I've mentioned this before, but you set those rules, and it's like, hey, we're coming into this room to brainstorm. There's no bad ideas. Your idea might lead to another idea. You might be the most creative person in the room, but we're going to let the best idea win. And part of being in that session, you understand that we want to, we're not trying to problem solve. We're not trying to figure out how this is going to be done. If we want 3 Lamborghinis, we are going to have 3 Lamborghinis, even if it's just in our own minds. But, we dream. And then when you have a group of people that are just used to dreaming like that, and then they're able to see that we are able to execute, a month down the line, 2 months down the line, based on that one conversation, then they're more willing to jump in and collaborate and be a part of it because they've seen the success of previous sessions, So.
Yeah, no, those were some of my favorite moments because everybody knew it was going to be a fun time. Mm-hmm. We're not judging anybody. We're not there to provide feedback in that moment. Like you said, my crazy idea could lead to a legitimate idea that somebody else has, and I think that was what was cool. But the important part was you setting, the framework up front. Like, hey, this is a dreaming session. We're not trying to have the realists in the room that think how are we going to get this done. We're just thinking of what could be done.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of go top down from there. I'm like, if this is the most extreme idea we have, how can we kind of move our way to later down what's more realistic? But it was cool to see like some ideas that would come out of that. And it led us to some cool places to be able to film. And we went to Marfa one time to like film a cool bumper video out there. And
Marfa, Valentine was right outside of Marfa that we drove down to, where we almost got bit by a rattlesnake.
We did.
I lost my wallet before we even filmed, so we searched for it for like 2 hours. Found it on the road. It was on the road where we first stopped.
That's wild.
It was nuts,
but the cool thing is, like, as a leader, like, I'm sure you didn't have all the answers in your head, mm-hmm. but for me, on the other side of it, what it built was trust. Mm-hmm. It built trust to know, like, man, my leader trust me enough to come out here. We had bought a drone for that video. We'd never flown a drone before. Like, we're putting creative budget into something we've never done. And I'm sure in your mind, you don't have everything, meticulously planned out. But I think it was built and cultivated a culture of collaboration. Mm-hmm. Community was definitely built in that moment, but then also again, like I said, just trust to know that we have each other's back. Like, we're gonna figure this out together. It wasn't like, hey, y'all go figure this out, I'll be here in my cozy home while y'all are in Marfa with rattlesnakes. Like, no, you were there with us. You stayed the night with us. And you were there filming with us. And I think that's the beauty, and that to me is a true leader, because it, like you said earlier in the episode, you're not just giving values, you're living the values.
Yeah, live them up. I don't think I looked forward to it. Like, I look back at those years and go, man, those are great years of my life. I mean, I can't say the best, because I feel like, all my life is the best years, but I remember specifically accomplishing so much with those teams that we were leading. And, it was a family. Like, it felt like a family. I mean, we weren't like, brother, sister, brother, with everybody, but it was just, I didn't feel like anybody was walking around on eggshells. We could just have a dream and go try to execute it. Mm-hmm. And we did our best. And yeah, I think as a leader, sometimes you can get into this analysis paralysis kind of mode where it's like, I got to have it all figured out before I do anything. Mm-hmm. And if you wait till that, if you wait for that to happen, it's never going to happen. And so I just had the mindset to just continue to, if we had some idea and dream, we'd go figure it out. We'll have a plan, but when it gets there and the plan's not working, we're going to audible, we're going to figure it out, we're going to make it happen. And that's kind of how we executed. So
for sure. One of the biggest things I feel like creatives need, and I mean, this is anybody in general, but I think creatives specifically, because of the vulnerability and the sensitivity that we have. And, sometimes we neglect this, but I think we need community. Oh, and I think it's what keeps people going. I think, like you said, we look back on the times I was most fired up to show up and to serve and to be a part of the church was because I knew the people were going to be there. The people that I surrounded myself with were the ones that I get to do life with. So for you, how important is community for creatives, and how do you feel like you can cultivate community within creatives?
Yeah, I wouldn't be here today without the community I had. I wouldn't be here without my mentors. I wouldn't have the wisdom and the knowledge, and I wouldn't have had the ability to execute without people pushing me. And I've heard people say it, and I believe it. You're the person now that, the person that you want to be in 10 years is going to be determined by the number of books you read and the people you surround yourself with. So community is huge. And so, I'm a part of Church Circle. Church Circle is a great community for creatives, for pastors and creatives, all church staff, really. I would plug in. I would. The crazy story. This is how vital community was for me. So in the beginning of my leadership journey, I offered Pastor Stephen Furtick $1,000 to sit down for coffee with me for 30 minutes. I was just being bold.
Trying, yeah.
He was going to a conference that I was going to be at, and I I just figured out his email, and I got an email back from his assistant saying, Pastor Furtick's going to be busy, so he can't meet with you, but his creative pastor would love to meet with you. And so at that conference, I got to meet Larry Habakkuk at the time. He was the creative pastor at Elevation back in like 2012 or something like that. But I was reaching out for community. I was reaching out to say, I don't know what I don't know. You're a part of this large organization. I want to learn from you. And I did get to meet him, and he invited me into a mentorship group that I was a part of, not for very long, but I learned a lot in the 2 months that I was a part of it. But that's how vital it is. And so, for you and for those that are listening, like, you gotta be a part of something that's going to inspire you, that's going to people that are going to help you grow. You need a mentor. You need to plug yourself in, because I'm telling you, you'll go further, and you won't make as many mistakes along the way, even though mistakes are important to make because you learn. You'll be able to stand on the shoulders of the giants that have gone before you, right. And you're able to ask questions and allow somebody to speak directly into, hey, you're this situation you're dealing with right here. They can speak directly to it because they've dealt with it. They're right. 10 years ahead of you, and they can make that road a little bit clearer for you, And so I did that, and it worked out for me. It might not work out for you. I sent Pastor Larry, I sent him like his favorite college, he had like a basketball hoop for his office. Like just after I got to meet him, I was like, I found out that he loved the Washington Huskies, I believe it was. I sent him a basketball hoop and just like try to make an impact on his life, just to like say thank you for inviting me. And so, but I think that's how you have to want it that bad to use like all the ways to figure out how to get to the places you need to go, whether it's books, whether it's mentorship, or whether it's sending a random email to a pastor that you aspire to be like for $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. I think community, it allows you to know that you're not alone. Like the issue you're dealing with is not uncommon.
Yep.
But then too, like you said, it allows you to get sharpened. It allows you to think beyond. It allows you to take people's experience and almost like, time travel in a way to know like, okay, the 20 years they took to figure that out could take me 20 minutes because I just have a conversation with them. And especially in today's world with the amount of access we have to technology and internet, stuff like that, stuff like Church Circle, which is amazing. An online community that if I don't have it in my hometown or my local context, I can go on the internet to find that.
Yep.
And like you said, be able to lean on other people that have a different context, or maybe, you said you went to C3 conference, which was a lot bigger of a church, but you got to see your eyes open to know like, man, this is possible. And I could bring this back to what I'm doing, my 150 person church. Yeah. And it may not be to that scale, but it's with the same heart, and I get to do that and bring that back to what my local church is doing. So,
yeah, I think conferences are the secret sauce. You don't have to come back and explain things to your team. If they go to the conference with you, it's the secret sauce. So there's so many things you can do. But yeah, I agree. Community, conferences, books. I met Mark Batterson. Yeah, he wrote the Circle Maker, and he told me one time. He said, if you read a book, you're basically taking 10 years of somebody's life experience, and you're however fast you can read it, you're learning from them in that amount of time. And so I love books. I don't read all the time, but I try to read at least 2 books a month. And I think that's a great goal to shoot for. But leaders are readers. And so if you're not reading, it's going to be hard to lead. And so I told my daughter that the other day, and she went to my bookshelf and she's like, all right, Dad, what book should I read first? And I was like, I like it.
Dr. Seuss. No, but yeah. So anyway, well, thanks for being on the episode, man. I think there's some good nuggets. I think beyond that, what the biggest takeaway I'm taking is no matter the context you're in, if you can add leadership into your daily rhythm, like you can expand what you're doing, whether it's on a soundboard or it's making stage designs or doing social media for your church. I think leadership can take you a lot further than you can ever imagine by yourself.
100%, man. Plug in, trust God. It's a process. You ain't going to get it overnight. Fail forward. You're going to make mistakes, but at the end, God's going to use it. God will use it for his glory. And that's it.
Let's go.
Let's
do it.
Let's go.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.